It's time to step out now, into cosmos, into mythos, into psyche.
In the beginning, there was only darkness, infinite, formless. Within the darkness emerged a thought of intelligence that contemplated throughout eons of time and space. In the formless, the womb of the Earth Mother was created, and the ancients knew her as Papa. Then the light was created, the light of the Sky Father, Wakea. In their embrace, the light of Wakea penetrated the darkness of the womb of the Earth Mother, and from their union, the universe was created, given form, given life, a universe of opposites. You see, only in marriage of light and darkness can there be form, and only in the sunlight can there be life and growth of all living things, all of which must be fathered by the light and mothered, you see, in the darkness of the womb, the egg, the soil of all creation.
You got out.
Yes. So many paths lead to our extinction. It'll take both of us if we're going to survive, but not as friends. Are you ready? We have work to do. We are the authors of our stories now.
I say welcome back. I hope everyone's doing all right. Shelter at home, shelter in place, whatever they're calling it. It's snowing here in Boulder, and it's time to finally complete the Boneyard series with a show for Jupiter. Wyrd Thunder indeed. That music that brought us in was a Hawaiian creation myth, curated beautifully by Kalya Skintia. That's how I say his name, at least. It might be improper. And he's also in the background at the moment with a little snippet there of we are now the authors of our story from the new Westworld season. That's good. If you're not privy to Westworld yet, well, I'm sure there's a lot to do in the coming weeks or months. And the third season is going every Sunday night. This is not sponsored by HBO, by the way. I just like the implications of that show. So I say, happy equinox, weird equinox, and where in the world is this growing of the light going to take us? I do apologize for the wait. I've been talking about this show for some time, in that it does complete the Boneyard series, but there's a lot that has happened in the world with all these fishy Boneyard Corona themes. And I now find myself completely self-isolated in my Airbnb in Boulder, Colorado, unable to get home for the foreseeable future. I have no idea when I'm going to get home and see my lady in my world over there. But I have begun, as she has, to see the silver lining of it all. And I think you're about to see a glimmer of the silver. Because you see, when we're stuck at home and all we got is this, also my upgraded computer. I have this huge iMac in front of me with my whole podcast studio set up. So it's really inspired me to kind of up the ante here as far as the podcast is concerned. And so that's one way I'm being optimistic. I'm going to be able to catch up on a lot of books. I've finished 2 of them. One I'll reference throughout the podcast since being here. And who knows, maybe I'll read every book in my library when it's all said and done. I don't know. But I do think for all of you that love the podcast and my writing, it is going to benefit you a lot, because I'm going to commit to creating something every day while under lockdown. And so if you're not subscribed to my newsletter or me on social media, that's where I post all the stuff. Make sure you do that. Visit my website, holstoheavens.com. And so also, as so many of us are turning to plants at this time, I think it's important to remember plants are little celestial planets. And planets are, well, I think I got that wrong. Plants are little terrestrial planets, and planets are celestial plants. It's the old Paracelsus idea. And if you go to my site, holstoheavens.com, there's a banner for Sage's free classes that he's putting out right now on plants and planets. I highly recommend them. They are free. There's going to be 4 of them. And I'm just trying to spread the word, trying to pollinate the world with the good information about plants and planets. And so go check it out at my site. And just a few words, what I think is happening here, in the sense that it all did kind of begin when Jupiter moved into Capricorn in early December. Some people say it was late November with the first case. Other people say it was the end of December. I mean, to find patient 0 with something like this is like finding a needle in a haystack. But it was around that time Jupiter moved into Capricorn, and it was also eclipse season. And so I find it kind of auspicious timing to finally be doing this show. Because when we're talking about Jupiter, we are very curious in our relationship to the truth. That includes relative truth, but also truth with a capital T. And I think one truth that many of us can get behind at the moment is that we have disrespected the mother for too long. Plowing into her wilds, taking and never giving back. This is her immune system acting up, doing what it does best. Kawanascatsi, the world is out of balance, and this is a way of bringing it back into balance. Have you seen the locusts in Africa? I mean, this is true pandemonium. And if you didn't read my piece about pan and how it relates to panic and panacea and pandemonium, well, Capricorn is pan, and this is all happening in Capricorn, right? So here it is. And I think what we really need to do most right now is work with the fear, first and foremost, because that weakens our immunity, and it definitely plays into what the media is doing. And we just need to get our frequency in tune with her, in tune with the mother, in tune with love. It seems so simple. It seems so cliche, but it ain't. It ain't. We got to lay some good prayers down at this time. Spend lots of time in nature, if it allows. And we need to be fearless in the face of this change, because I myself, I am not afraid. I'm actually quite excited about this, because we are seeing 2 things happen side by side: a global pandemic and an absolute collapse of the economic system. Both of those, we have no idea what the great turnout's going to be at the end of it, but I have a feeling it's going to be very beneficial for a lot of us. And of course, transformation is an ugly process. It's scary. I'm not taking away any of that. I'm not even taking away the reality of the virus. It's real. But what we can do is not feed the fear. We can tune ourselves up with the plants and the planets and just be that beacon for all of our friends and family. I mean, I'm stuck alone without the internet. My God, if they turn the internet down, I'm definitely going to finish every book in my library. But I can't talk to my lady. I can't talk to anyone outside of this Airbnb. I hope that doesn't happen. But whatever happens, hey, we don't know enough to worry. We need to be in our center. And so in the last show, well, we learned, the last of the Boneyard that is, that without ancestors, we are left with ghosts. That's when we were talking about K2. I mean, I left out Rahu a little bit, but I think now he has shown his face very clearly with the shelter at home. All dragons at the moment can be found at home. They have just begun to wake up. Rahu in Cancer. And before that one, we talked about Pluto, where we learned to get comfortable with the chthonic depths. And the first was Saturn, that stoic stickler of a sturdy man playing around with those ST words. And now, my goodness, it's finally time to find some silver lining, if it's possible, in this Boneyard with Jupiter. He's said to be fallen here. So, like, when Jupiter is in Capricorn, we really have to put in the work and never lose focus of the long-term vision. What is the long-term vision but a sustainable future for our children? A sustainable future for all of us, right? That is what is happening. Pluto is purifying with the help of his friends. And I think it is so essential to have this perspective. We remember that Jupiter moved into Capricorn in early December. And it is an awkward transition for this wise scatterling. There's resistance around putting the arrows back in the quiver and going back to the drawing board. But everything in its right time, all in Kairos. And again, it has always been said that Jupiter is fallen in Capricorn. His instincts become surrounded on all sides by seemingly impassable peaks. The freedom he was used to in Sag became dizzying, and he tries to find his center again by dreaming of the long game. How can we see that right now? So he takes in this panorama of the rocky terrain. He notices signs of a dragon, spots a mountain that weirdly resembles an hourglass, and then gets a wave of a terrifying horde of butterflies as he stares into a cave at the base of it all. These three sites have gods which reside near all of them, and they are K2, Saturn, and Pluto. Mars, at the moment, is visiting all of them. In fact, at the moment, while I record this, Mars is applying towards a conjunction with Jupiter. Watch these closely. Mars is going to exacerbate the situation as he touches all the players in the Boneyard that we've talked about. That music in the background was Parangi, by the way. Amazing Earth music. Very good stuff. Check out both Kalya and Parangi. So lucky for us, we can actually see when the encounters are going to happen. With Mars, like with Saturn, it's going to be on April 1st. With Pluto, I think it's the 26th, if my memory serves. With Jupiter, we already experienced Jupiter with K2. That was on January 6th. That's when he visited the dragon. Think back to then, what was the theme? Well, this was revving up a little bit. The release and the remember, hopefully remembering our inheritance, making a deeper connection with the ancestors, preparing us for this moment. On April 5th, just around the corner, Jupiter will enter that cave that made his stomach sink and the butterflies swarm. There's endless possibilities to what will be witnessed down there, but we must remember they are both illusory and purifying. That cave, of course, is when Jupiter visits Pluto. And then finally, on the winter solstice of 2020, exactly 3 years from the time Saturn had entered Capricorn, the two will meet for their once-in-a-20-year palaver. It will take place on the mountain which resembles that hourglass. The view will be blinking with strange lights that go on forever. An alien landscape illuminated like an electronic mycelial network. The creations of the human race multiplied by like triple digits, interconnected in ways never before imagined, kind of like the Westworld, if you've watched it. Overwhelmed, a black swan eclipses the sun. Now, the thing is, the black swan's already happened, and so he tries to remember his place. We too must try to remember our place, our ground state, never forgetting the sanctuaries of the wild gods. We cannot forget them. If we do, it'll be the end. We must keep an eye on the past, another on the future, and our heart here in the present, always. So it's just a glimpse, really, of the long game of Jupiter. We've experienced one big moment so far, another one as I'm speaking to you with Mars visiting, and then April 5th with Pluto, end of the year with Saturn. We can't be afraid, though. It doesn't help. There's never been an opportunity like this in your entire life to change the old stories. And I say embrace it, like the dawn after a long, cold night on the moor. So, do you have the patience to wait until the mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? Because that's my strategy at the moment. I'm waiting for Mars to pass through the Boneyard, and I'm going to assess the situation from there. I am going to see if I can even fly, and if not, I'm probably going to take up sailing, buy a sailboat, and try to sail to England. It's a long game, baby. It might take me a long time, but I've watched a lot of those great documentaries of young people sailing across the world. I think I can do it. I think I can sail to England. The things we do for love. And so, lest we not forget the symbol of Jupiter either, which is basically the crescent of soul that is facing to the left from the cross of matter. It symbolizes to me the soul attempting to transcend the cross of matter, or we could also say the cross of matter. The cross of matter. And right now, there's a lot that matters. There's a lot on the line. And Jupiter is also visible in the morning sky. Actually, just recently made his sextile to the sun. And so if you're an early riser, you can see Jupiter in the east as he moves towards the square. And then over the summer, there'll be the retrograde and the opposition. But he is trackable in the sky. And that sky gazing, bringing sky to ground, is one of the most important parts of becoming a holistic astrologer. You must have a relationship to the sky to bring it to the ground, and then to your tongue for all that you're talking about this with. If you see clients, if you talk to friends around it, about it. So if at any point during this show, a door swings open in your mind and the corona-free breeze pulls you to step through it because of something that I said, consider going to iTunes or just scrolling on your podcast app. It really does take 2 seconds. You can do it right when I'm talking to you right now and leave some stars or a review. If you leave a review, I will hook you up with the Jupiter and Capricorn class that I did back in December. You just have to send me a screenshot and I will give you that class for free just for leaving a review on the podcast app. And if you really want to support the podcast, which it really is in need of it right now, go to patreon.com/Adam Summer. And I say that because of what's happening in the world, many people are cutting their pledges, and I totally understand, but it's also a freaky thing for this podcast because at a certain point, if I'm not able to receive energy for the show, I'm not really going to be creating the show. I'll still be doing astrology, but this podcast is completely fueled by Patreon. And so if you want to support the show for even $1, you get access to over 40 other podcasts. You can win a free reading every month. There's a raffle. At the higher levels, there's just endless hours, it seems, of content. And then also community that we're creating. And so this Sunday, we're going to have a parlor and we're going to swap Corona stories and look at charts and see how everything is coming together with all of these stories. And so I'm really excited about that. can go to patreon.com/AdamSummer and you can sign up there. I appreciate that. And what else to say? Wait, do you hear that? I think that's some weird thunder coming from the great unknown. The greatest fear, honestly, is of the unknown. It's primal. In all of us, it creates terror, and it can make neighbor turn on neighbor. It can make us racist, selfish, irrational. We are faced with the great unknown right now, and that, my friends, is the weird thunder of Jupiter. It doesn't take much to start a panic, and I think that we are teetering on the brink of it, and it's up to us to be that beacon of sanity for everyone around us during these trying times. It is our relationship to the great unknown that's going to make or break us.
I'm so certain all the time. I'm just so absolutely positive that everything I'm thinking is right. And everybody's so certain behind the curtain of their mind. And the benefit of doubt just get drowned out in the shouts of a world with just two sides.
Welcome my friend to the new age. No book we can live on the same page. Nobody is searching for in peace, just everyone loving their outrage. But I feel you, cause it pains us, all the wounding, so contagious. And I cannot say you're necessarily wrong, cause it really is fucking outrageous.
Becoming frigid and the synapse getting rigid and the closing mind on all sides. See them conquering divide. Embrace the ambiguity, the wonder and the mystery that certainty will certainly hide. We don't have to find love. Love is gonna find us. We just need to seek and defeat all the walls that our mistrust built up. Then we can go into the great unknown. Then we can go into the great unknown.
The Great Unknown by Wookiefoot. A band that deeply relates to Jupiter for me. Reason being, way back in the year, probably 1999, 2000, when I first discovered Wookiefoot when I was in high school, I was infatuated with them, and a lot of it was lyric-based. And Mark Murphy's his name, the lead singer, talks a lot about Joseph Campbell and Rumi and Hafez and Terence McKenna. I was like, who are these guys? What is going on here? And so intellectually, this band just like opened up all these doors for me. And I would say had a lot to do with the beginning of me setting out on this path that I'm still on today. And so I am forever grateful to Wookiefoot, even though I don't listen to Wookiefoot very often anymore. But you will be hearing some Wookiefoot throughout this podcast. And yeah, check them out, like all the musicians I've been using throughout this podcast. So speaking the truth, rolling thunder is a way of saying it in a native tongue. It comes from a Dylan tour that he did back in the 70s. And for this podcast, we're calling it Wyrd Thunder. Every single show of this Boneyard series has had the word weird in it, and that's W-Y-R-D. Weird, as if it's been woven by the Wyrd sisters, the Nords, at the base of that sacred tree. And all of this was already known. Fortuna's wheel keeps on turning. And so I feel that we have been so far away from reality. And now we are confronted with it. This is Jupiter and Capricorn bringing the truth of the long game. All of us listening to this, I'm sure, want to live in a more sustainable world. We can see that the world that we live in is unsustainable, corrupt, and full of lies. And we want to connect deeper to the earth. We want to live sustainably. And so at the moment, the mother is taking in a giant inhale. Planes are grounded. Travel is forbidden. Everything is in the way stopped. I don't know if you can feel that, but that silence. There's a weird thunder rumbling in the distance, but there's a silence right now. Even if this is a conspiracy, the lizard portal is open, still, nature is a greater intelligence than any human being and their agendas. It's woven by the Wyrd sisters, and you just have to accept that this was something that we signed up for when we came into this body. And so what are we going to do with it? Because it's an amazing opportunity. Last time Jupiter was in Capricorn, it was 2007, 2008. Housing bubble burst. Absolute recession. Obama became president. A bit of chaos for a lot of people that were invested in real estate and many other things. In that time period, Pluto also moved into Capricorn. We can say that was like the first taste of the Boneyard. And this mysterious unknown person named Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin. For this very reason, it can't be printed. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. It must be mined, and it gets harder and harder and harder over time. And it's an immutable ledger. It is something that was created in response to corruption within economies and government. And here we are. It is the moment for Bitcoin and crypto to shine. And it's actually starting to show signs of that. Today, everything's up almost 20% and the regular markets are flat or down. That's interesting. It's uncorrelated today. As a whole, this is a great debate within the space. We don't know, but it's important because the long game, seen through Jupiter and Capricorn's eyes, in the Bitcoin chart, Jupiter is in Capricorn. Pluto is in Capricorn. Mars is in Capricorn, kind of like the sky at the moment. Bitcoin was built for this. And I find that so interesting because it relates to truth, right? Truth of trust. We need to know how to trust each other and to have an immutable ledger, to have, in a way, a trustless way of interacting or transacting between each other, not just with finances, but also with our creations, right? To really truly own what we have created and do creative things with our art. It's all possible within the blockchain. And I've mentioned Westworld a couple times. Like, there's an interesting expression of the blockchain in the first episode of the new season. So that, in a big world sense, that's what was happening last time. Also for myself, I started learning astrology. I gave my first reading when Jupiter was in Capricorn. So I've been on this 12-year journey now doing this. And I started the podcast about 11 years ago because after I started giving readings, I started the podcast very quickly. So think back to then, because that was the last time Jupiter was in this area of your chart. And another thing that was really interesting about the last time when I was thinking about this in Peru was that it was how the plants brought me to the planets. All right. That I had been to the Amazon for the first time when Jupiter was in Capricorn last. And I was basically sent home by the plants. They're like, you're not meant to be here right now. You need to go home. Something is waiting for you. Well, that something was my Qigong teacher. And also Cosmos and Psyche, which was the great seed that was planted in my head that began my journey with astrology. And then 12 years later, the planets bring me back to the plants. I run a retreat called Ancestors and Angels, and everything changes. Everything has been different since that retreat for me. And I'll share a quick story that happened, and it relates very much to Jupiter. That in one of the ceremonies we were doing, the curandera we were working with, Reina, has Jupiter conjunct the moon in Scorpio on the midheaven. Okay, get that in your mind. Jupiter, moon, Scorpio on the midheaven. She is a curandera. She is amazingly powerful. And as we began the ceremony, when the candle was blown out, it began to rain. So silence, darkness, Amazonian rain on the top of the Maloka. When she started to sing, the lightning began and the thunder. And what also happened is these things began to start shooting off of her headdress. They kind of looked like big selenite crystals, like rods, like coming off of her head while she was singing. And I could not stop thinking about the power of song, the power of frequency, of rolling thunder, weird thunder, of speaking the truth. And there is nothing more truthful than a medicine song. A medicine song heals, and it just opens up this whole reality that does amazing work on us. And the moon in that ceremony was also in Scorpio, crossing over her Jupiter, so sensitizing her to her birthright, her relationship to the world. And I knew, like, when I was watching this happen at the ceremony, I was like, I am never going to forget this. Like, this is the most powerful example of Jupiter Scorpio I've ever seen. Like, it was just so incredible. And within that, there's the truth, right? Our relationship to the truth in the long game. When we have a knowing that's that deep, that like everything is okay, that there is a healing power to our energy and our song, that it all basically boils down to our relationship to fear, right? And we are in a moment when there is so much uncertainty, the great unknown, and it creates a lot of fear. When people are afraid, strange things happen. Mars with Jupiter at the moment. Next up, Pluto. After that, Saturn. Like, it's not going to ease up anytime soon, my friends. I'm not going to deliver that news, but I'm going to deliver my truth of what I think is happening. Now, there's another thing occurring that I think is really fascinating, and I've been reading this book pretty much since Jupiter's been in Capricorn. I started it before that, but I've been really engaged in all the material and trying to finish it since early December, and that's America Before, The Key to Earth's Lost Civilization by Graham Hancock. Whatever you think about Graham Hancock, this book is incredible. It will change the whole human story for you in a really exciting way. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because it was back in 2007 when the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis was first presented. And then it has endured unrelenting barrage of criticism and unpleasant attacks ever since then. It's not accepted by consensus reality that there was a global cataclysm caused by a comet 12,800 years ago. But the evidence is absolutely overwhelming. And what Graham does in the book is lay out all of the evidence, the geological evidence, the archaeological evidence, narratives through culture, a lot of culture here in North America and also in the Amazon, attaching it to Egypt and how there's this overlap. There's all of these fingerprints of a connection between so many different places on the earth to this mysterious civilization that just disappeared in an instant. Well, that's what will happen when a massive comet comes and hits the glaciers. Not just once, but multiple times, right? It's a fascinating book. And so last time Pluto was in Capricorn, this hypothesis was presented. And now this book is out there. Like, he released it when Jupiter was in Sag, but still, like, it's out there. And in it, like, when I was reading this book, like, there was so many moments of, like, just kind of feeling as if the ancestors were watching me read this and just kind of poking at me, be like, do you remember? Like, are you remembering? Can you see this? Do you see the missing piece of the puzzle? And one of the stories in the appendix is about this black star bundle, the Skitty Pawnee, these Native Americans here that venerate these black stones. They're meteorites, essentially, and they have these powers that connect them to the stars, right? And wrapped in animal skins, these bundles show the cosmos in a way that is very eerily similar to the way Egyptians do so and also build pyramids. And the Egyptians as well had a very interesting connection to the same meteorites, comets, right? And so these visitors, like, I've never experienced a meteorite bringing me in contact with star beings, but I have experienced a meteorite protecting me from psychic attack before, which was amazing. But in this book, like, there's all this amazing evidence that kind of rewrites the whole story. And for me, what's even not more fascinating, but incredible, is it tells a greater story of the landscape here in North America as well. Like, so much of the American West and the crazy features throughout Montana and Utah and also the Great Lakes and stuff like this can be explained through this comet impact 12,800 years ago that just hit the glaciers that were miles thick, and you have instant flooding, sky burst, forests on fire for hundreds of years, that kind of scene. So everything was taken out. A mini extinction happened, but there were survivors. And after something like civilization goes away, I don't think that COVID-19 is going to take us out. Not quite. But what happens when there are survivors? Well, we need to rebuild a civilization. And what is civilization but a clearing in the forest, right? And I think at this point, our clearings of the forest have gone too far. And in a way, that's kind of the poetry of something like a virus like this, is encroaching into the wild and inhumane practices with animals, like at these wet markets, just putting animals on animals, like things, wild bacteria and viruses are going to bloom, and they're going to hop from animal to human and wreak havoc. And I think that is very much how Mother Earth works her immunity in a way. There's always these checks and balances. There's always the light and the dark. There's all these cycles that we study, right? And so we need to respect the wild. We need to reclaim our wild twin. We need to rewild as a part of this process. And I think that's also how we create immunity around this, is to not be afraid of it. Sure, most of us are going to get it, but just to greet it and be like, all right, little guy, let's do this. You don't have a chance, right? To let him come in and just to move with it, and then just give it back to the collective, give it back to Great Spirit, because inevitably most of us are going to get this thing. And that's how it is. And that's just me speaking truth, right? Looking at the facts, seeing how it's all playing out, knowing the astrology, and hopefully that dispels some fear in a lot of you. It's just like, we need to get into our ground state. We need to be fearless with all of this. And that's my feeling around some of this Jupiter in Capricorn and the timing. And so here we are again with Jupiter there until the end of the year. And a friend of mine, Chris Kaplan, mentioned something that's pretty interesting. I haven't read this book yet, but I might as well now, that my lovingly name of this signature as the Boneyard also, of course, kind of points to the idea of a graveyard. Well, Neil Gaiman has this book called The Graveyard Book. It's actually Tim Ferriss's favorite audiobook. And Chris told me that when Neil initially got the idea for this book, because his son was afraid of graveyards, Jupiter was in Capricorn. And then when he wrote the book, or when it finally was released, Jupiter was back in Capricorn. Well, Neil also has Jupiter in Capricorn in his natal chart. And I found that fascinating, because that's a book actually that's been pending on my list. I want to read it, and I've been wanting to read it ever since I've been calling this aspect the Boneyard. And so if you've read that book, tell me how you see themes as far as Jupiter and Capricorn in it. So in getting mythological, we're going to do some of that in this show. We know that Jupiter is also Zeus in a Greek sense, king of the gods. And from one angle, from the far left, he's a terrible, terrible figure or example of the patriarchy. But from another angle, which I think is more mythic and important, he is the one who brings enlightenment, rules thunder, lightning, storms, all of this, right? And it was also Zeus who overthrew his father with the help of all of his brothers and sisters, right? And so through this flash of lightning, like an idea comes in, or hopefully the faith, great Jupiter word, comes in to be able to face whatever it is that we are confronted with. And at the moment, we are confronted with a lot. Wherever this is happening in your chart is where we are trying to find the victory tales. We need to stick it out. We need to have the long-term vision. We need to move through the voices of our fathers, of media, coming out on top of the Titans, no doubt. And also with a victory tale to share. All great stories are worthy of constellations, right? And so this is an energy that we need to really tune to. We need to listen to Jupiter. Like, where is the truth? Because my God, if you're constantly watching the news, just going to that site, what's the site? Johns Hopkins site, where it shows in live time the deaths and the cases. It's like insane. It's wrong. It's don't do that to yourself, right? If Jupiter in Capricorn were a tarot card, he is the emperor. And if he spoke, he would say, I am security. I am the very personification of force. And when I'm speaking inside of you, you understand that weakness does not exist. As long as you have not seen me, you will know only insecurity. You will not have the power to make or do anything, to express, to resist yourself. You are a victim. But in my presence, your fears are over. You will cease to doubt and to devalue yourself. No one can force you to do what you do not wish to do. Now, that does not mean to pay no attention to this stay-at-home piece. I do think this is important to slow the spread. We don't want to overwhelm the hospitals. I think that would cause absolute too much tragedy. Like if many other countries turn out to look like Italy, it's going to get dark. And I really have been praying deeply that does not happen. So if the emperor spoke some more, he would say, when I manifest inside your body, you enjoy complete balance. You are incapable of stumbling, or we could say getting a virus. With me, a body is the center of the universe. It is supported by an immense force and is capable of facing anything. COVID-19. I am terribly calm. When I place myself in your mouth and muscles, your words are precise and you do not tremble. Everything in you is pacified. Organic processes, thoughts, desires, heart, memory, time, and space. Everything pacified. Rolling thunder, fearless. Weird thunder, amazing. That's if the emperor spoke, according to Alejandro Jodorowsky. Now, Jupiter also relates to what Werner Herzog would call ecstatic truth. It is mysterious, it is elusive, and it can be reached only through fabrication and imagination. You could also say stylization. So words kind of fall short, but with the right image, with the right metaphor, with the right energy, ecstatic truth can be reached. And I have this feeling that many of you are feeling this right now, that maybe the world is finally catching up to the way your inner landscape has been most of your life. I have been witnessing this with clients. I've been witnessing this with me and my lady and some of my friends. There's a strange giddiness to what's happening. I don't know what it is, but it's a feeling. Like, it's not in my mind. It's a feeling of like, oh my God, it's finally happening. Like, when we make it through this, like, the other side is going to be so much better. And that is what the Boneyard does. It purifies and restructures. On the other side, when all of this moves into Aquarius, we're going to have a future vision. There will be innovation. We won't make the same mistakes again. That is the prayer. So a quote to tune us even better to Jupiter in Capricorn. We turn to Paracelsus, who says, thoughts give birth to a creative force that is neither elemental nor sidereal. Thoughts create a new heaven, a new firmament, a new source of energy from which new arts flow. When a man undertakes to create something, he establishes a new heaven, holes to heavens. This is what I mean. This is what the Skidi Pani meant. This is what the Egyptians meant, bringing sky to ground, listening to our ancestors and the whole story of the sky, knowing that it all starts somewhere around the Big Dipper and transitions along the Milky Way and pops out on the other side. This is the journey of the soul, my friends. And we need to tune into this, and we need to realize that our thoughts do indeed create reality. And so if they're full of prickles and fear and red and black and that ain't heaven. That ain't a holes to heaven. We need a hole to heaven that is straight from the heart, straight from the center. We create our worlds like this. And there's this old magical idea of the egregore as well. It's an occult concept that represents a thought form or kind of like collective group mind. And it can be seen even as like a psychic entity as well, that like the thoughts of a group of people create this thing. And there's a symbiotic relationship between the egregore and that group. So you think of the idea of like corporation or government or any memes that get sent around on the internet, like weapons of mass destruction or the enemy. Like these have life forms on their own. And I would even say this is probably how the tropical zodiac works, because it's not based on precession, that it's a egregore of some kind that millions, if not billions of people have fed into this idea that somehow organizes our perception of reality and works to tell time and fate. I don't know. I've always said it's something like that because, I mean, science is definitely never going to prove how you're a Libra when actually your sun is in Virgo. You know what I mean? And way down the processional line, you're a Libra, but you're actually in Aries. Like, get out of here. It's something like a thought form that we've created over time. And so we must be very careful of what it is that we are thinking and what it is that we are believing, because memes, ideas, they are like viruses. I mean, essentially that's what they are. And what the media is giving and what so many people are falling into right now, it's bringing us out of the ground state, right? There's an invisible hand behind all of this. And until we take back our stories, we are the authors of our stories, well, then we're basically playing a role in someone else's story. And that is not what I'm going to be doing, my friends. And I hope that is not what you plan on doing as well, that we need to track the source of all these truths. We need to understand really how to translate our intuition as well, decode that thing. There's really no other way. And also keep what we're taking in to a minimum. It's good to be informed. There's a lot going on. The news is changing moment by moment. But there are other gods than the media to be paying attention to.
I'm so certain all the time. I'm just so absolutely positive that everything I'm doing is right. And everybody's so certain to hear the worries of their mind. And just so damn afraid of the grade that we make almost everything black and white.
Welcome my friend to the new scene. Conspiracy theories elude me. Misinformation surrounds us. I just wanna listen to Rumi, but I see it and it's growing. And it show no sign of slowing. And everyone wounded, so everyone needs for an enemy to be opposing.
Look up to the sage as to show us the truth. She reaches out her finger and she points to the moon, but we're just staring at the hand, staring at the hand. Never understand. The whole point is what she's pointing to. We don't have to find love. Love is gonna find us. We just need to seek and defeat all the walls that our mistrust built up. Then we can go into the great unknown. Then we can go into the great unknown.
Practical prophecy. I think that's a good phrase for Jupiter and Capricorn. Not gambling with the knuckle bones of wolves, which it seems that's what our leaders love to do. Corporations, pharmaceutical companies, just gambling with our lives. And we need practical prophecy. And practical prophecy is something that astrology can offer us, right? We know that this Boneyard is separating. We know that it's intensified right now because of Mars and Jupiter making contact with much of it, but it's separating apart. And we are moving into new terrain within the next 12 to 24 months, and it's Aquarian terrain. That Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is exciting to me. We need to have the long vision, that long game intact. And so let's take a peek at a few of the other faces Jupiter may take. Now, I do this with the utmost respect to the gods I'm about to talk about. I'm not taking their powers away. I'm only saying there's an archetypal multivalence between Jupiter and, say, Odin. So let's start with Odin, right? Who some would say is the equivalent to Zeus to Scandinavian myth. And ruler of the gods, storms, chaos, same idea. But missing an eye. A little bit of a different story. They're all different stories because they're different gods. That's why I do not mean any disrespect here. But he lost that eye hanging from the world ash tree, the Yggdrasil. That's how I say it. I know it's probably wrong. Wounded by his own blade, he hung upside down from that tree for 9 nights, finally spying the runes of wisdom and returning them to us as a gift. Now, 9 days, 9 is a Jupiter number. Think about the 9th house, right? And also this process of a kind of very intense ordeal, a shamanic moment really, is hard-earned wisdom. We don't have rites of passage in this culture. We're soft, and we need them badly. And so, well, when cataclysms happen like this, I don't know if that's the right word for it, might be too big, but pandemic is about right on par with what we're saying about it. It's a rite of passage. We're in it. And so how are we going to move through it with grace, right? These gods offer us something, right? To me, honestly, part of the silver lining as well is like the government is telling me to stay at home. And so all of us, almost at this point, are forced to retreat from the world. K2 and Capricorn's like, all right, I'm still releasing that identity of the world. Like we have nothing to do with it right now. Rahu and Cancer's like, let's be at home. Let's be with ourselves. Let's go inside. Let's deal with the relationship. Let's deal with the kids. Let's deal with everything I've left at home for the past great while. And that's where the dragons are. Ketu's like, I'm still releasing the stories. I'm helping you remember. I'm helping you remember what's really important in this life. And we only can do that by going within. We can only do that by tuning our ear to these gods and listening where they are speaking in the chart. And so speaking of oracles as well, like the runes, that in the last Mercury cycle, I learned as much as I could about. And in this Mercury cycle, because it started on my descendant, I'm learning how to be away from my lady. I'm learning how to just basically be in the mirror of the unknown, the great unknown. There's this Yoruba god named Aranmala. I think that's how I pronounce his name. And there's this great book, which I've read from many a time on the podcast, called Myth Astrology by Raven Caldera. I highly recommend it. And he relates Aranmala to Jupiter and Capricorn. And he writes, the Yoruba Orisha Aranmala is the keeper of the Ifa. The oracle worked with a painted board and a bag of cowrie shells. Ifa is not a process that one can learn in a single day. Followers of Aranmala study for several years under the instruction of a master. Aranmala is quiet and studious and expects his prophets to work hard and not grow too fat on the adulation of others. To him, divination is something that is accomplished by the polished skill of the diviner, not merely some airy-fairy communion with the universe. In some legends, he is one of the first divine beings who helped to create the world. In others, he was once a mortal man who was befriended by 2 gods, I can't pronounce their names, one of them Shango, and made immortal through his worthiness and their regard. His echoes of rags to riches story that often accompanies, well, Jupiter and Capricorn. And so we're kind of all in the rags at the moment, aren't we? And how are we going to get to Shambhala? Well, Aranmala eventually grew tired of the gods forever coming to him and asking him to cast Ifa over any little thing. Boy, do I understand that. He felt as if no one really valued him for himself, but only for his work. Saddened and angry, he told his wife to spread a rumor that he was terminally ill. He had corona, and on his deathbed. Sure enough, each of the other Orishas came to call on him before his death. Udu refers to let them see Aranmala, and while she served them tea and spoke with them, Aranmala hid behind the curtain and listened. Every one of them eventually got around to slyly asking who Aranmala had chosen to inherit his sacred Ifa board, which glumly confirmed in Aranmala's heart that he was not loved for himself. But as the story goes, There was a guy that relates to Uranus that came around, didn't give a shit about the Ifa board, asked about his friend, and, well, he kept practicing the Ifa, the astrology, and happily ever after. Now, the reason why this matters is two. How serious he took his teachings, or how serious he took this practice. This is something I can turn you to with Mark Jones and I. Every conversation Mark Jones and I have ever had, we talk about this, ethics in astrology, the importance of getting certified, of going deep and not, just listening to these podcasts, reading a few books and then throwing up the sign. I think that's a dangerous practice. Like Capricorn says, learn with a master, says, go deep, get certified, ferment on this, give donation readings for a while. It's very important because your words are magic. All of our words are magic. And if you don't know what you're doing with something like astrology, you can do a lot more harm than you can do good for a person, especially talking about subjects like, well, what we're talking about in this podcast, that the Boneyard can become incredibly troublesome for a person's psyche and mental well health if it's not delivered properly. And so that's one thing that is taught to us about Jupiter and Capricorn and this Orisha. And another is something that I think a lot of us astrologers, tarot readers, healers, etc. experience, is that when we become our practice, right? And this happened a long time ago for me, where pretty much all of my friends, all of my ex-girlfriends always are reaching out to me and asking astrological questions. And I've, over the years, created boundaries around this. I'm like, really? Every time you reach out, you have an astrological question. Like, can we just please talk about something else? It's very, very important, to separate ourselves from our work. I mean, our work is amazing and we're all going to be going real deep within our work in this time of isolation. But I think there's great wisdom in this story of Arunmila. I really do. And again, that book is Myth Astrology by Raven Caldera. And then finally, another face of Jupiter could be seen in one of the oldest stories that we have with our relationship to chaos, okay? And that's with Marduk, who also is said to be quite like Jupiter in Mesopotamian astrology. And he's equipped with bow and arrows, think of Sag, his thunder club, storm net, and his trademark lightning dagger, all pretty much what Jupiter and Zeus have, right? And so his encounter with Tiamat, the water dragon, the symbol of absolute chaos. And Marduk was able to destroy Tiamat, shot an arrow straight down that dragon's throat, and then sliced him up and created the earth and the heavens. And these festivals, my goodness, in Michael Bajent's book, Astrology of Ancient Mesopotamia, he describes it in great detail of these 12-day festivals of what they looked like to propitiate, to make Marduk happy so that Tiamat or any other form of chaos did not come into their cities. Now, can you imagine if that's what we did? I'm not talking just the US of A. I'm talking like Western nations, anyone, wherever you live. If we didn't just celebrated spring break, I don't care about the virus. This is like it's gonna get in my way of getting drunk on spring break. Woo! Idiot college students, but instead during this time, like we held sigil. We got with our family, we went into the teepee or the hogan, we went into prayer, we did what we could to propitiate the gods, because obviously we are in a moment with Tiamat, the symbol of chaos. And if we're going to be victorious in self, in our relationship to chaos, we need to be aligned to Jupiter. And he's there somewhere in your chart. He is there. And when you take a peek, like looking back, like how did ancient societies deal with viruses? Well, many people believe that it was the spirits, bad spirits, or the gods that were pissed. And that's why they wreaked the plagues upon us. There's a great example of this guy, Procopius of Caesarea, in relation to the Justinian plague and putting a lot of blame, like Trump has done, the Red King, around the China virus, that kind of a thing. And it's said, it's speculated, I don't think it's universally agreed on, but like him pointing fingers around where that plague came from basically ushered in the Dark Ages. Now, passive aggressive things like the China virus and pointing fingers like that is basically gas on a fire. Like, we don't need that. Thank you very much, the Red King. You can just have a Vipassana now, go off for 10 days and just be with your mind. Just think, if you've ever had a self-reflection or any personal thought like that, just a deep reflection, well, now's the time, old man. Now's the time to think about your actions for sure. And even though we don't think about, like, this is the wrath of the gods or the spirits, a lot of people are talking about how it's nature, Mother Nature coming back like I have. But what if it was Jupiter in Capricorn? Right? What if it was simply Jupiter, Marduk, Tiamat, the old story that's dreaming itself through us? What do we need to do? Right? What do we need to do? Well, we need to get in touch with the truth. We need to get in touch with the ancestors. We need to get in touch with our spirits. And we need to beam that, because we're all beacons and we can transform the energy around us. And that, to me, is the highest expression. Like those selenite lightning bolts that were coming off of Verena's head in the ceremony. Like, we need that spoken, just straight from the heart. We need that to help everyone around us. It's our relationship to the great unknown. It really is. We don't know enough to worry.
My center, but this wound is where the light can enter. Still clinging hard to surrender, but this wound is where the light can enter. Free floating, I lose my center. This wound is where the light can enter. Still clinging hard to surrender, but this wound is where the light can enter. And I don't know, you don't know, we don't know, and so we go into the great unknown.
That there's the end of The Great Unknown by Wookie Foot. So there's this incredible book, maybe you caught the title of it when I was talking to my buddy Adam Tetlow, by John Martineau, called A Little Book of Coincidences in the Solar System. Maybe you have it. And there's a chapter in it called Jupiter's Giant Seal. This is amazing for all of you geometry lovers out there. Jupiter, the largest planet, was king of the ancient gods. Oh, we know this already, John. A delightful feature of its orbit is its associated pair with these asteroid clusters. The Trojans are two groups of asteroids which move round Jupiter's orbit 60 degrees ahead of it and 60 degrees behind it, a sextile. Jupiter, at the moment, is sextile to the sun. This partnership perpetually moves round the sun as though held in place by the spokes of a wheel. The positions of the Trojan clusters are known as the Laplace points, with Sun, Jupiter, and Trojans forming gravitationally balanced equilateral triangles. Just for the fun of it, if we now join the spokes as shown, or you can't really see it, but it is incredible the way that it looks. And it creates the Star of David, the Seal of Solomon. And the Seal of Solomon is something that can control demons. It's something that can control nature. So exactly the same Earth-Jupiter proportion may be created by spherically nesting 3 cubes or 3 octahedra, or any threefold combination in them. I mean, you need to see these models to understand fully what I'm saying, but the idea is that 60 degrees ahead and behind of Jupiter are these asteroids called the Trojans. And the relationship between them and the Earth creates these equilateral triangles, which is sacred geometry, which is also life, because the Fibonacci sequence is also a part of this. It's mind-blowing. And I love that book, by the way. I highly recommend it for everyone. And so let's see how Jupiter's giant seal may be showing up for you. as Jupiter is visiting someone everywhere in their chart. Let's take a look at what that might be. It's been a few months, as we know, since Jupiter fell into Capricorn. Since early December, if your memory is serving. His weird thunder has shaken the markets, created a bit of pandemonium around this viral life form, and ramped up the electional debates to a worrisome degree. We can't say this is all because of Jupiter, though. Yet, this has all happened since his ingress, so the least we can do is entertain his teachings. Being involved with the Boneyard as we know now, it is he who is gifting us with the vision of the long game. Saturn reminds us there are no shortcuts, so Jupiter takes the long way home, whistling on the way. Pluto reveals the gory truth, gnashing its teeth in our shadow. Jupiter locks eyes with it and beams understanding into the demon's heart. And K2, the tail of our dragon, keeps releasing our old stories, and it is Jupiter who appears in the form of a forgotten ancestor, helping us to remember. It's quite the scene, one that none of us have ever experienced. So what does it look like, house by house? Pull up your chart. I recommend whole sign, and let's go through it. If you've never seen your chart before, just go to astro.com, put in your details, and then you're in. So if you're a Capricorn rising, if this is happening in your first house, well, one of the most well-known Delphic maxims is know thyself. To know such a thing, there are a few ingredients necessary for success. You must know how to be alone. You must know how to get into your body. And we also must know how to travel inwards. If we can do all three, we are in the God house. It is a space Jupiter is gracing for you at the moment. Do you know thyself? Keep asking this question. It will get you closer and closer to the truth. If Jupiter and the rest of the Boneyard is transiting your second house, the opportunity of a lifetime to change your relationship to abundance is nigh. Yes, this relates to money, but it's much more than cash or crypto. It's in knowing what you are most connected to, which is everything. Your family and friends are a lifeline right now. Nature's bounty is always gifting you the nourishment needed. The universe is conspiring with your every thought and web of belief. So it's wise to be careful in what stories you keep telling. Understand this network of loving support, and it will take you far, much further than the bounds of this transit. If Jupiter is whistling through your third house, you might hear a tune that sounds something like astrology is just a finger pointing at reality. So says Stephen Forrest, a wizard born with Jupiter and the Sun in Capricorn in the third house. Having practiced for nearly 5 decades, it's clear he has a sense of Jupiter's wisdom in Capricorn. Wisdom, which shows how to stick it out, protect our truth no matter the circumstances, and to watch how it slowly blossoms over time into a legacy created by rich insights and stories worth telling. What story do you need to tell? What are you willing to commit to for 50 years? If he's in your fourth house, it may be time to build a home, or at least renovate your concept of what that means. Once you get clear about what it looks like, you can begin by committing to the process. If it's land you're looking for, let a patch claim you. If it's a house, be practical, not overly American about it. However, Jupiter's call is pulling at you. However he's pulling at you, the end result will change the way you feel in a space when the day is done. If they are all in the 5th house, courting the muse is like chasing fairies through the dark forest. They come, they go. We wonder if they were ever there at all, or how we even got here. It's a real blessing when she touches us, and it's a real pain in the ass when she decides to go on hiatus. And so we must create a space for the muse. Only then will she come more consistently. If we visit daily without expectations, ready to be a vessel, it will eventually happen. And at the very least, you have come quite some ways with yourself, and you got some practice in. Maybe next time. If Jupiter has made it to the infirmary of the 6th house, whether it's the overwhelm of your to-do list or the volume at which your body is speaking, there is maintenance to be done. Jupiter is likely exaggerating something you do in your attempt to bring order to your chaos. It may be too much. Take a step back, sit down, drink some herbs that are good for your liver. Wait for a clean vision to come. Then get back to work at your newly discovered pace. If Jupiter is above the horizon, influencing your love house, the 7th, you got to remember there is a currency to longing. Even if you are happily married or spinning in love down late night streets with wet kisses, there is something your heart longs for. Identify it. Make an altar for it. Know that it will come to pass as long as you keep feeding it with your praise and heartfelt songs. Grief and praise, they share a coin. There's an invaluable currency to this longing. Never forget that. If Jupiter is doing the deep work in the 8th house with the rest of them, it only takes a candle, one candle, to illuminate the darkness. And with that same flame, you can light 10,000 others. So take your tales of dark nights and exhausting dances with your shadow and make art with them. Tell your story. Everyone loves a good telling of transformation. How has it been for you? If Jupiter is at home up there in the 9th house, that 9 number we learned with Odin, you're, well, on a journey. Likely, you are closer than ever before to your true path in life. It is absolutely essential to remember that your path is your path, not anybody else's. Be careful with the isms. Be even more aware of how you are sharing your newfound faith in others. We are all floating down different rivers, but they all lead to the same place. Tolerance and humility are the key spices to Jupiter's life in his home here. If Jupiter is at the top of the chart, in the 10th house, your relationship to the world at large has changed dramatically in recent years. Now that the king has arrived, you may be witness to a throne motioning for you to sit in it. Whatever the position of this seat in the world, it's always important to remember the initial vision that got you here. You've worked hard for this moment. Treat it with the utmost respect. If you feel your throne has been usurped, you just need to change your perspective on the game, my friend. If Jupiter is creating a panorama, there's another pan word, of a vision for your community in the 11th house, remember, oh, it's so true right now, oh my gosh. George Carlin once warned us to never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. He has Jupiter opposite Pluto in his chart, i.e. deep insight. Mob mentality, groupthink, tailgates, violent protests, teepee hoarding. I mean, come on, you guys. Teepee hoarding, really? What about a bidet? What about how the Indians do it? How many trees are we taking out with this teepee hoarding? I mean, you get the idea. So we change in groups is the idea. Our minds meld into something larger, like that egregore we were talking about. So it's essential to not be getting swept up in some movement, potentially losing your center. Jupiter should be bringing you more people that are just like you. A celebration is needed. Just don't let it become a stuffy echo chamber. Entertain other perspectives. Hang with a variety of folks to get that 360 view. And finally, is home away from home, the 12th house. If Jupiter is in Capricorn and the rest of the Boneyard in your 12th, it's possible your message is reaching more people than ever before. If you've been putting in the work, there's even more of a certainty to this. Yet, with more reach, there is more reaching towards you. For your energy, for your time, for your power. The old wizards observed hidden enemies in this space. This is both literal and metaphorical in my view. Literal in the sense that they are there, but you may not see them yet. Metaphorical because there is a part of your own psyche that remains to be a blind spot. So let Jupiter be a finger pointing towards these surprising realities. It'll change everything. And so it is, my dear friends, a superficial glimpse into Jupiter in each house. he will be there until the end of the year, remember. So if there was a lack of resonance for you, let's give it some time. We still have much to discover with Jupiter's fall into grace of Capricorn. There is a retrograde on the horizon as well. It's not exactly silver lining, but it's something faintly shining in the dark, I think, of the Boneyard offering. Just enough hope to get us through this. Yeah. So grab a visionary lifeline wherever you can, I guess, is the idea here. It's a blessing. There is a blessing to this in disguise. It is an opportunity. Everything in life is an opportunity. This is just a really big one. And if you can't see it yet, my friends, you got to keep that smoke hole open. Dr. Martin Shaw wrote this amazing response to this wild moment we're in, and I'll just read a piece of it because I think it will weave us nicely towards our final part of the show. And he says, seek vigil, not isolation. In Siberian myth, when you want to hurt someone, you crawl into their tent and close the smoke hole. That way God can't see them. Close the smoke hole and you break connection to the divine world. Mountains, rivers, trees, Jupiter. Close the smoke hole and we become mad. Close the smoke hole and we are possessed by ourselves and only ourselves. Close the smoke hole and you have only your neurosis for company. Don't close the smoke hole. You need it open to connect with Jupiter. Pray. Give back to the land. Trust that this is all going to pass and that it was woven by the Wyrd sisters at the center of all things. And that's all I got for now. Remember to spread the love. I create these shows for you for free and for free. I mean, all of us are running out of money right now. It might go to zero. So for free, we can help each other. And I will create this, and then you can leave some stars or a review. And to incentivize that, I will give you the Jupiter and Capricorn class if you send me a screenshot of the review. You can do that on your podcast app. You can do that on iTunes. I thank you ahead of time. Also, if you go to patreon.com/AdamSummer, you're guaranteed to get aligned with Jupiter's good side, to capture a little lightning in a bottle there. We're going to do a parlor this Sunday. I'm going to do a surprise class on Chiron's role in all of this the Sunday after that. And there's just a lot of discounts and free things and community that's happening over there. And so patreon.com/AdamSummer, as we're all on lockdown, let's just go deep with this together, right? Like, thank God we have the internet still. If that internet goes down, expect riots immediately. Hopefully that doesn't happen. So patreon.com/AdamSummer. This show is also brought to you by Solar Fire, the best astrology program in the world. If you use promo code SOMA, you will get 15% off of the program. Definitely a worthy investment in these times as we're quarantined. It'll allow you to go real deep with all your questions astrologically. Look at all the times throughout history that Jupiter was in Capricorn. My goodness. Their site is alabe.com, and that's where you purchase Solar Fire. Use SOMA to get 15% off. And finally, For Sigmatic, FOUR Sigmatic. They now have a mushroom veg protein superfood. Seriously? I mean this right now. There has never been a better time to fortify your system with medicinal mushrooms. Chaga, reishi, cordyceps, lion's mane, maitake. You need these mushrooms right now. They might save your life. I know it's an intense selling point, but I'm serious. I have been dosing very hard, cycling within Four Sigmatic's medicinal mushrooms, and also ones that I've harvested on my own, like chaga and stuff like this. I don't want to get this thing. I may have already got this thing, but I don't want to get this thing. And so I'm going about it by fortifying like a paranoid nation would with their defenses. I'm just making sure that all the sentries are on lookout and my immunity like an army is ready for deployment at any moment. And you can do that by working with medicinal mushrooms. Use Soma on their site, get 10% off. And so again, one last thing, on my site, holstoheavens.com, you will find Sage's free classes right there at the top. And watch them. They're free. They're amazing. Plants and Planets, you kidding me? And also when you're on the site, I'm also offering half price for all my readings during this lockdown. So just sign up for a mini reading and we'll treat it as a full reading. This does not apply to the planetary journeys or the complete reading. Those are already 50% off. So yeah. Thank you for making it this far. I don't know how long this show is yet, but I'm pretty sure it's Jupiter length. I'm pretty sure it's the biggest in the solar system that I've ever done. I'm pretty sure that I feel like a catharsis just happened. Like my brain has been washed, that like the dragon has been washed, that, I don't know. We need to take care of each other. Rahu's in Cancer. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer when it's there. Still got 6 years to go before it returns. But hey, we need to find the dragons at home. We need to name them. We need to be very caring of our surroundings because any little thing can set each other off right now. Like we're all on edge. And so we just need to be very much in our center, be very careful in dancing with these dragons at this time. And I'm going to leave you with a song by Wookiefoot. Another one. This one's called Brainwash. It's fun. And I think it relates to just getting in the right state of mind with Jupiter. Like people can get so dogmatic. People can get so narrow in their worldview. Not us. We are only open, we're always open, but we're always looking for openings for those holes to heavens. That's what we're up to here. Entertaining all views, all different strains of astrology, and trying to find the truth, something that I like to call cosmonosis. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Be well, be kind, be clean, be fearless, and I will talk to you next, likely with my friend Ren Butler. He has a new book about the goddess. I have not read it yet, but he just sent it to me, and I'm excited to and talk to him all about it. And so, until then, be well, be kind, be clean, be fearless. Be that center for your community. Thank you again for listening to the podcast. Sorry I wasn't able to share the song. YouTube is a bit more strict than the podcast apps. So if you'd like to listen to the whole show, go over to Spotify, the podcast app, SoundCloud, or really wherever podcasts are found. This is Tree Theater. Ciao.